And we are recording and we are live.
Did you hear from Kieran?
I did not, but you know, I sent the invite, co-host invite kind of late. So he knows it's on. So if he can, he will. And I can always check email while we're doing this. So welcome everybody, by the way, for those that are joining us. We'll get started in just a minute. And I don't see anything yet. So hopefully he'll get to pop on. I don't know what his travel schedule is. It's kind of crazy. So, you know, one thing I just thought of, Andy, that I could have put on this, but maybe you can just announce it, is Tree Farm Day.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So that's just a thought as far as upcoming programs.
And that's the first Friday in June.
Yep. And I'll see if I can very quickly pull up some information on that, because I'd love to give the location. Let's see. We have
It's going to be the Clover Rod and Gun Club Tree Farm in Walkatong Road, Kingwood Township.
Kingwood Township. There you go. Okay. So you get to repeat that in just a few minutes when we begin.
Yeah, it got a little raw today, but it's supposed to be in the 70s tomorrow.
Oh, bring it on. I'm ready.
Yeah. Hi, Heather.
So what kind of temps do we have in West Virginia, Chris?
Oh, it's been just really cold and damp the whole month practically.
Yeah.
Today was strange. It started off a little bit cool and rainy and cloudy, and it ended up like warming up to in the low 60s or something.
Nice.
It cleared off. So yes, it's supposed to be warming up.
Yeah, well, we're ready for sure. I think it was yesterday I was driving somewhere and it started to rain, you know, a little bit. And then next thing I notice is there's like literally little pieces of hail and snow. I'm like, come on.
Oh, we had snow recently, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what spring's all about, right? It's unpredictable, and that's just the way it is. So crazy.
Well, that looks good for the next 10 days.
Excellent. Very good. All right. Well, I know people will still continue to join, but why don't we get started so we can stay somewhat on time? Are we good to get started?
Yep.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so welcome everybody again for this month's Backyard Forestry in 90 Minutes. I'm Lori Jensen, Executive Director of the New Jersey Forestry Association, other hat, and we're just glad you're here. Just a couple things before we get started. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to pop them in the Q&A portion at any time, and we will address them at the end. If you just want to stop by to say hi, please put something in the chat and we'll be monitoring that throughout the presentation, but do stop by and say hi in the chat. Questions in the Q&A. And without any further ado, Andy, how are you tonight?
I'm good. Welcome everybody. Looking forward to another nice monthly Backyard Forestry. So you got your buttons there, Lori?
Yeah, I've got my buttons there. It wasn't working there for a second, but there you go.
Okay, so this is the third Thursday of April, and this is the when we have our Backyard Forestry, the third Thursday of every month. And I guess we've been doing this for about 3 years now, I guess. So there have been some great sessions that we've had. We're going to have another great session tonight.
All right.
So a little bit about the Forestry Association. Most of you probably already know this, that we are a nonprofit, tax-exempt, IRS 501c3, been around since 1975, and we are the voice of woodland owners in New Jersey. And there are a lot of interesting things that go on. So, you know, we like to monitor anything that's of importance to woodland owners. So if you are not a member, we certainly encourage you to become a member. It's not that expensive. Just go to njforestry.org, and you know, we're getting into the annual membership time. So now's the time to join. So what do you get if you're joined the NJFA? We have quarterly newsletters. We have a website with a lot of valuable information. We have an annual meeting, which is coming up on May 7th. Annual meeting is available only to members. So if you're not a member and you would like to attend the meeting, you're gonna have to join now. The annual meeting this year, as it was last year, will be a virtual meeting on a Saturday morning from 9 to 11. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to find a venue that allows us to get back to in-person. Hopefully next year we'll be able to do the in-person meeting again, but right now we're kind of stymied. The other thing we have is the New Jersey Woodland Stewards Program that also has been abbreviated because of the COVID. We did have a one-day session, which is part of the program, and the people who were woodland stewards last year will have an opportunity to do some of the online stuff coming up later this year. Backyard Forestry in 90 minutes, of course, that's what we're doing now. Landowner representation, we do get involved with stewardship, taxation, farmland assessment, of course, is a big part of what we are reviewing. We do have part of that is before COVID anyway, I was on a taxation committee, the farmland assessment and taxation committee, but that committee has not met in 2.5 years. Hopefully that stuff, as things start opening up, we'll get back to that. And of course, legislative monitoring, one of the things we have done in the last year, as we have retained the services of the
New Jersey Green Industry Council.
PLC, and they do have legal representation to follow up on things in the legislature. So there are several bills right now that we are monitoring. There is a new legislation. There's a new legislature this year, and so any bills that were expired or have to be renewed. So we are following anything that has to do with forestry. So if you are not a woodland owner, there are other things that are important to people. That we do support other things: fresh air, clean water, recreation, wildlife habitat, forestry education. And of course, this is part of the forestry education, as is the Woodland Stewards Program. So there are, if you're interested in the great outdoors, the forestry end of things, there are benefits to joining, even if you're not a landowner.
All right, thank you, Andy. So without further ado, it is my privilege actually to introduce our presenter for this evening. And I have to do a shout out to John Cleeshes with the New Jersey Forest Service, who's the one that actually referred us to Christopher Hayes. He works for the U.S. Forest Service. He is actually out of Morgantown, West Virginia. He is an entomologist, and he works in the Forest Health Protection division, I guess, out of the Morgantown field office, and just found out today that he actually is helping out with the stewardship program as well. So we get to work together. So Chris, I'll stop sharing my screen if you'd like to start sharing yours, and we'll get started.
Okay, let me just share my screen here. All right, well, thanks, Lori. I am Chris Hayes. I am like she said, an entomologist with the U.S. Forest Service, and I work out of let me get my PowerPoint going here too.
Oh, it's a nice website you showed up there.
I work out of Morgantown, West Virginia, but I do work with New Jersey a little bit. As Lori was saying, kind of random spot in the presentation here. So as my regular job is an entomologist, and I do work with New Jersey. I work with Rosa quite a bit and helping her with their forest health program. And lately, I have also been helping out with the stewardship program as our stewardship coordinator retired. And so we're hopefully going to have somebody new coming in a couple months for that. But so today, I just wanted to give you guys a presentation about our forest health monitoring program, a little history of that, and kind of the new directions we're going. And I'm going to focus a little bit on more the aerial survey and program. Well, I'll get into it. Let's go here. But I just had a few more slides on the introduction for our office and who we are and what we do. So in the state and private forestry section of the Forest Service. We have a Forest Health Protection Office, and we serve a 6-state area. And we have entomologists, pathologists, and some botanists also. So we're mainly give technical support, subject area experts, and also we do a lot of money pass-through grants for different programs. And so this just had the federal land ownership overlaid over the 6-state area and the District of Columbia. Just a little bit more about our structure. The U.S. Forest Service, people think of the forests that we manage in that ground, but also we have a research and state and private section to our structure. And so we are in the state and private as is stewardship. You might be a little more involved with the Forest Health Protection Program. Just from some of our objectives and stuff, we protect long-term health, sustainability, and productivity of forests. Like I was saying, it's really financial and technical assistance to states, but we do work also with other federal organizations, national parks, and it's to see that we have healthy forests on all lands, really. We have a lot of different activities. In addition to the technical support, we do assist in a bit of suppression work for more aggressive insect and disease problems, your emerald ash borer and your gypsy moth and that kind of thing. All right, and so I'll start a little bit with a little history. This is more or less to set up that the Forest Service, was before we were the Forest Service, we were a division of forestry in 1876, and that actually was a part of the USDA that started working with concerns of private-owned forests, because at that time there really wasn't a national forest or set-aside forest like that, and so through the years the Forest Service was set up, and in 1978, there was a law that set up the cooperative forestry programs that we run. So the stewardship, our urban forestry, our wildland fire assistance, and our forest health protection all comes under this Cooperative Forestry Act of 78. And I gotta minimize something, I can't see my whole screen. And so this really dictates what we do for monitoring and monitoring insects and diseases. So from that law, the secretary prescribes that in cooperation with federal departments, other federal lands, and cooperation with state foresters, equivalent officials, other agencies, that we conduct surveys of to detect and appraise insect infestations and disease conditions, man-made stresses affecting trees, and establishing a monitoring system. So, this law really dictates a lot of what we do, but monitoring forests and forest insect and disease progressions, trends, it's a big part of how we keep a kind of finger on the pulse of what's going on in the forest. So I found these in a Life, I think it's a Life magazine, this is the oldest, this is the oldest surviving aerial photograph. So it's from 1860, it's from a hot air balloon from 2000. The camera was attached to a hot air balloon, 2,000 feet. This is over Boston. So, from the earliest days of photography, we kind of thought, oh, well, can we get up over, what can we get a nice shot from overhead? Somebody in 1909, Julius Neubauer, put this camera on a pigeon, and that's the shot the pigeon got. So foresters and early entomologists just after World War II got to thinking, well, we have some damage in the forest. We want to get an idea what's going on out there, and so in the early 50s here in the Pacific Northwest, some entomologists decided that they'd get in a small plane and fly over the area and try to map it. So this was the start of what now we refer to as our Area Detection Survey program. There's another group of folks that were in Oregon that were going up in 1952 to look at some forest damage. And this type of plane, a Cessna, is a single engine Cessnas, 182s, and these are essentially the same planes we use today, actually. Excuse me. So in the early days and up until into the 21st century, even the entomologists carried maps. They planted their route and tried to keep track of where they were on their topo maps, looking out the window, and just sketched in areas that had the specific damage that they were going out to look for. And I think a lot of these were fairly targeted surveys, whether it be for blowdown, or this one I think refers to that, or to bark beetle damage. And the use of paper maps went on to like 2005 or something. I mean, it was how it was done for over 50 years. And the system works fairly well for some things. It doesn't work for everything. And it tends to work a little bit better in the West, where the forests can be a little bit less diverse in species composition of those forests. And so this picture right here is not so different from the aerial surveys that we do today. A small plane, like just about the same type of small plane, except for now we're using tablets, GPS's, GIS software that we developed for the tablet to do the mapping. But beyond that, it's pretty much not changed very much. So like I'm saying, today's aerial survey detection surveys utilize the modern technology, and it's just in that we could have a GPS on board that tracks where the plane is flown, and as you're going, we can record damage on our tablet. So here is a picture of a little screenshot of the program we developed. And basically this is developed to be used from a moving airplane that's moving rather quickly. So we have a not so exciting name, the Digital Mobile Sketch Mapper, and our tech office, our applied sciences, our forest health assessment and applied sciences team put this program together. And basically it's going to refresh and adjust the map as you can see a little plane icon on there, and it keeps track of where you are. You can rapidly draw right on the tablet with a S Pen or your finger, and rapidly give it attributes and save that. And so it's a technology that gives us the ability to get kind of a big picture idea. These rapidly made polygons or areas of damage are fairly accurate, but not extremely. And so it's a general thing. And a lot of it in the east here, in our especially our mixed hardwood forests, we tend to get to attribute the polygon to things like defoliator, unknown defoliator, and unknown hardwood, and have to spend a bit of time going to the ground to make the final diagnosis of what was really causing the problem. So this system has been used for over, I guess, 70 years now. And so there's pros and cons of it. And to a certain extent, we are still doing it, manned aerial surveys, but we are also looking towards the future and doing fewer manned aerial surveys. So I just put down some of the pros and cons of this. It works really well when the damage signatures are the damage lasts. As you know, some trees, if they have something going on, they might their needles or their foliage might change color and then rapidly drop to the ground, or some types of damage. The tree is distinctly not looking well for longer periods of time. So it can kind of depend on that. And also in areas where there's not a large number of different damage agents. Like I said, if there's a lot of different things that could be going on, it's a little bit harder to judge from the plane, and there's a lot more ground truthing that needs to be done. Traditionally in New Jersey, this has been used, and throughout the mid-Atlantic states and New England, aerial surveys really keyed in on the gypsy moth. Now, gypsy moth, actually, we're moving to using a new name, and so if I'm referring to gypsy moth going forward in this talk, I'll be referring to it as spongy moth. The common name, the Entomological Society of America and the U.S. Forest Service kind of got together and working on changing some insect names. I don't know how they got to spongy, but well, I do. The egg mass on the tree can appear to look like a sponge, but so the spongy moth defoliation, as you know, can be, I'm assuming because we live in an area that often has outbreaks, and defoliation is pretty distinct, and it happens at a certain time of year, and June being July-ish, and this has been a rather damaging invasive insect for a long time. So it's been of concern, and there's a lot of our area surveys in this area really keyed in on mapping that damage. A con would be that if you have a problem in a plane, it's a rather good chance that you could get hurt badly or killed. So we are very cognizant of the fact that there's a bit of risk involved in doing this. That's a drawback. Like I was saying, I think a little bit before, there's many insects and diseases that are not easily detected from the air. A couple examples: emerald ash borer in forested stands is difficult to detect because ash trees typically and a lot of stands are not uncommon, but they are a smaller component, where they're anywhere from 1 to 5% of the stems. And a lot of the ash that are dying are in urban settings. We don't do this aerial detection over the urban areas. So it hasn't been a really good tool for mapping or keeping track of emerald ash borer damage. We've used trapping to establish a county by county spread of emerald ash borer, and once it's there, it becomes pretty obvious that it's munching through your ash trees. Hemlock woolly adelgid is another invasive, damaging, tree-killing insect. Excuse me. That's really not that great at the area surveys, and really not that great at picking it up. It's only would be good when the tree is pretty much heavily damaged, dying from the insect. And a lot of what we want as far as detection of hemlock woolly adelgid is spread into new areas, and that generally takes on the ground surveys. So this wouldn't be really good for that. I think my last slide here on the pros and cons. Most diseases and pathogens in trees, this is really not that great for. Some have some signatures that are easily seen from the air or above. Oak wilt pockets. Oak wilt is an issue that we're watching for in New Jersey. It hasn't quite been spotted there yet. and it's a wilt fungus that causes restricts the water movement in your tree and kills it through a wilt process. That can have a signature where the one tree and then trees next to it, it spreads through root contact, and the small clumps of wilting oaks can show up in certain patterns, and you can catch it with area survey. And it really, if you have a large area, you want to get a quick assessment of a large area. It is an efficient way to even though contracting planes, it's not the cheapest thing in the world, but you can cover a lot of ground and map a lot of area with this method. So here is what defoliated area of looks like the picture says gypsy moth, but the spongy moth, Lamantria dispar is the scientific name. This is primarily what in New Jersey, Joe Zotowski over at the New Jersey Department of Agriculture does a survey of the entire state in each year to look for pretty much the spongy moth defoliation. And the other damage that is easily detected from the air in your area would be southern pine beetle. They typically have this kind of russet kind of color, or early when they're first fading, they're a little more yellowish, but and you can see the spot where it seems to be moving in a direction where on the left side of this area of dead trees, they'll be dead, and the needles will be falling, and then it'll move in a direction where you go to red and then the yellow, and that's out in the advancing front of that spot. But this is a fairly good aerial signature, and that would be the other main aerial survey that's done in New Jersey, looking for new southern pine beetle spots, mainly in the Pine Barrens region. So here is from last year, and I'm not sure that there was a lot of flights up for southern pine beetle, looking for southern pine beetle, but Joe was able to get up and do this spongy moth survey, and there was quite a bit of defoliation. It was up throughout the whole eastern region. The U.S. Forest Service eastern region is New England, mid-Atlantic states, and Midwest and Great Lakes states. So there were good populations in Michigan, Pennsylvania, up a bit in New Jersey. New York had some pretty good areas of defoliation. So populations are up. There's quite a bit of activity going on with suppression this year. New Jersey does have a spongy moth suppression program going. It'll start next month. So this is our service area again, and this is a map where we overlaid the flight lines from the flights. So you can see they're not totally consistent from state to state. Some states don't have aerial surveys conducted, and some do. Some are wall to wall, some are otherwise. Here's some more kind of shots from some of our interactive maps that show the flight lines from the different surveyors, and you can see some of the polygons that they drew while they were in their flights and stuff. That's just a example of that. Also from last year, I just wanted to point out that spongy moth was quite extensive throughout Pennsylvania, and they had, and they can't really read that, but they had quite a number of different damaging agents that they detected, and really our surveyors and our states. So basically, in the Mid-Atlantic, we've gotten to the point where our area surveys are primarily done by our state cooperators. So a lot of decisions on what to fly for and what ground to cover is up to the states. So Pennsylvania, they're keying in more on their state forest lands as opposed to doing a wall-to-wall survey. So I guess I wanted to give you guys a number of links and information on some products that we have, and I want to do some demos and stuff. I think I'll start now, but one publication that we do that might be of interest is this Forest Health Highlight. And so part of our cooperative forestry program with each state, we have them do a rather short publication on the like they say, the forest health highlights of that year. I can just get. Sorry, I muted myself. I was trying to use my browser, but this whole bar of tools is in the way. Okay. Well, hopefully my screen doesn't look that is it
I'm
too hard
wondering
to
if you
see.
can you expand that screen at all?
I want to make this, there's the bar across the top from my screen is giving me all the chat or the pause, and I want to move
Oh,
it. I just want to
yeah.
move this bar so it's in my way.
I'm see if I
Okay,
can do, I don't know if I can help you there.
I
You
know, I
got it?
got it. I got
Okay,
it.
cool.
I dragged it down to the bottom. Hold on here, I'm just rearranging my screen. Okay. Anyways, okay, well, I was going to see if I could navigate to our Forest Service web pages, and I don't think it's necessarily that hard, but we just redid our web page, the Washington office web page, and there's a lot of information on there. And so I just did a Google search here, USFS, US Forest Service. It took me right to this homepage, to our new website. I assuming there's a ton of information on here. I haven't necessarily looked in all these different areas. There's a forest health under the science and technology. There's a drop down, and I went to forest health, and there's two different programs in here. There's a reference to forest health, and there's to a research program. So I think if I just did that, I got to our homepage for forest health protection on our Washington office website. I was kind of interested in just pointing out a couple links in this box off to the left here. This assessment in applied sciences has a lot of information and a lot about this aerial state survey program. But the publications and reports link there has helps you get to this forest health highlights. And I don't think they're that easy to find. I put in the presentation, and we'll try to get you the links that I have in the presentation. But if you can get to this point, there's a forest health monitoring publications and reports tab down here in the publications and reports, and there's the forest health highlights. There's forest health highlights for each state. New Jersey. They haven't posted the 2021. This should be about done. They just aren't posted yet. So if we go to New Jersey, select 2020, here is the 2020 report for New Jersey. It's going to tell you some of the more common insect and disease issues reported. Bacterial leaf scourge, we got here. Beech bark disease. No, beech leaf disease is a new one. I wonder if that's in here yet. Beech leaf disease, this may have been the first years you guys got that. There's a brand new thing that's a little mysterious that seems to be caused by a nematode. that seems to be popping up everywhere lately. Creates a strange pattern on the leaf and can kill trees. But I think that Forest Health Highlights is a nice publication that's specific to your own state that you can find in there. But there
Yeah,
really is. What's up?
Chris, I did just post those 3 links
Okay,
in the
great.
chat if people want to copy them down or go visit. And I'll include them in my follow-up email with the recording as well. So yeah, that was a really nice report. That's awesome.
Okay, great, thanks. So there are a lot of different publications and stuff on here, and I would encourage you to look around. I find a little bit of this assessment in applied sciences route into the website gets a little bit circular and oddball. But there are all the previous years aerial survey data, this annual report. There's national reports that are done every year with all the data, with the summaries for some of the major pathogens and insect damage. Okay, let me see if I can. What I'm doing. Okay, jump back over here. My navigating is all that great, but yeah, the only thing I'm having trouble with is this darn bar being in the way all the time. Okay. Okay. So those are just some links and some publications that might be of interest. All right, so we've been, especially with COVID, 2 years ago, there was a big disruption in the aerial survey program due to COVID, in that it was just, in the first 5-6 months that it came time to maybe want to get out and do these flights. And the whole idea of just being in a small confined space with another person was really not necessarily what people wanted to do. And so we did that year have the opportunity to use a lot of other tools to get information on tree damage, forest damage. And so some of the things we use are satellite imagery. Satellite imagery, has been around for a long time, and there's been people that have been very enthusiastic about its ability to detect a number of things. But it's always been a little bit of an issue in that obtaining high resolution imagery on a regular basis. It's become a lot easier. There's a lot more available. And so satellite imagery is a new tool, or is a tool that's being more utilized. Change detection is a type of utilization of satellite imagery where you look at different types of images or data collected from satellites, and you look for change from one time period to another. So if you had a stand of trees and they were healthy 1 month, and the next month you came back and they looked like crud, you might be able to detect that from some satellite imagery, and using those comparisons, detect areas that had undergone enough change, and detect that and say, oh, this is something to go look at. This might be a problem. UAS, unmanned aviation systems, drones have become a much more commonly used platform. And the U.S. Forest Service maybe is probably a little late to the party. We have just really gotten our drone program, started to get it off the ground this year with trained pilots and aircraft. Outside of fire, we've worked a little bit with Department of Interior with their program for doing reconnaissance on fire with drones for a number of years, but it's really a new area where we can utilize that platform. There's imagery we can get from the National Agricultural Imagery Program, NATE as we call it. This is a USDA program that does flights with aerial photography of entire states, and each state is done every 2 to 3 years. It's an extensive aerial photography program that these images are made. I'm not sure they're totally public, but within the Forest Service, is another federal agency, we have access to those. With a lot of this data and imagery we get, we can work on with it within our GIS, our Geographic Information System software, to do mapping of areas that we think have forest damage, and still mostly have to do a lot of ground checking with this type of stuff. So, I'm not advancing my slides here. What's going on?
A lot of times it's in the bottom left-hand corner of your slide. You might not be able to see them until you hover over them. Yeah,
Oh,
there you go. I see them.
What's that? Oh, I don't know why that. I used the same button then. Okay, it advanced.
Good.
That's what's important. So, what is a new direction? So Washington office has said to us that they want us to utilize these remote sensing tools more, perhaps reduce a little bit on the aerial surveys, but they still support aerial survey out of the Washington office. The eastern region that we are in, we are moving a little bit more rapidly into utilizing other tools besides putting people in manned planes and aerial survey. So we are being encouraged to use remote sensing and other unmanned plane to gather this data. This doesn't pertain 100% to the whole program. As I was saying before, we do farm out, maybe a okay term. We do work with our states, and the states do participate in aerial surveys. So a lot of our national forests and federal ground, we aren't necessarily flying right now, but states, if they choose to participate in this aerial survey program, to fly a good amount of forested areas within our region. So I don't think the aerial survey is going away right away, but we are definitely moving towards using some of these other techniques. So like I was saying, we now have a UAS program. It's been around for a couple of years, but I mean, we're really in the early stages. We are just, I think, getting our drones now. We have a cohort of pilots, some 30 pilots over the whole region that have been trained up, and so we'll be doing a lot of flights this summer. Under the current FAA rules for small drones, the so-called Part 107 is line of sight. So there is a limitation on the size of drones that most people can use. The military have very large drones, and but for the most part, because of a challenge of airspace regulation and keeping these unmanned aircraft from running into each other and other things, they've set up a rule right now that limits flights to line of sight, where the person operating the drone needs to be able to see it or have a network of people with radios and be able to keep track of their drone. And this limitation of how to safely manage the airspace with this technology in it is really limiting its use a little bit at this point. And the FAA will eventually come out with a new rule and a new way to communicate who's who's flying, where these aircraft are at any time. So we can fly bigger drones, we can cover bigger areas. But there's limitations because of that need to develop those rules. So I have been working a little bit with the university professor. This picture is Dr. Parkey's at WVU. And so we're working to look at different sensors to figure out which sensors and when's best time to fly for specific types of forest damage. And so just a lot that can be done there. Artificial intelligence is something that a lot of folks in the university are looking at now, where you have a lot of data. You can actually teach the computers to detect and do the mapping work that you might have to do yourself with photo interpretation. So there's a lot of future in that artificial intelligence of mapping stuff through that. I just want to talk a little bit about the use of satellite imagery. Like I was saying before, there's a lot more available, and it's better. It's this higher resolution. So when you have a satellite in space, one of the main things is there's going to be pixels in that photo, and how big is each pixel, and what do you get if the pixel is 10 acres in one pixel. That's not very good resolution, and it's hard to really, it's too fuzzy here. And so really the availability of higher resolution satellite imagery has been really getting a lot better. 10 meters, which is not a resolution that's super high, but it's high enough where you can see individual trees and detect certain kinds of damage, are becoming more readily available. These images and products can be brought into GIS software, where you can identify areas that you think are having damage, may have to go ground truth, but there's a lot being done in this area for forest health mapping. I'm going to try jumping around again. A little demo. The European Space Agency has their data freely available online. Not long after they collect images from their satellites, they post it to the internet. And so these links, the Sentinel Hub and this EO browser, are kind of pretty nifty websites. Let me see if I can do this again. All right. Okay. Let me start with this other one. All right. So yeah, I provide these links, and so this one is rather easy to use. It's not that high tech. Basically, over here on the left, you have the rendering or effects. So there's different types of okay, so I have natural color. Basically, you can punch in a location. I'll do Warren, Pennsylvania. The map will, like any other mapping platform, take you there. This is an area I kind of have already queued up. The Allegheny Reservoir, they call it. The reservoir along the Allegheny River up there had a big gypsy moth, spongy moth outbreak last summer. So if you open up this drop down, all these grayed out dates, there were images collected. And if you just select one, you'll be able to see one of the main problems with satellite imagery, and that is clouds. It's all fine and dandy that they had these nice sensors, but it turns out that some areas are very cloudy, and you can't they can't see through the clouds. And so, but as you can see on this drop down, there are enough passes as a satellite that there's 3 images a week. That's pretty good. This is Sentinel Hub is Sentinel is the name of a series that there's Sentinel 1, 2, and 3. I usually look at Sentinel 2, but there's a series of satellites that are of that kind of 10-meter resolution that they give you fairly nice. You can zoom in here. And, like I say, it's not quite individual tree. It kind of almost is. You can get in pretty tight, and it's it's more than just when you go in real tight, it actually still looks like something beyond. That's about it. So this date, that defoliation was severe. You can see that these tan areas. That's just like 100% defoliation, and it's not long. If I go out into July, see, this is the same with satellites there. The atmosphere is there. And so here we are, July 27th. Well, these trees have pretty much greened up and refoliated by then. This is pretty much most of the functionality of this website right there. Navigating on the map, looking for different images and different dates, but also this other satellites will be basic red, blue, green, and near infrared. Near infrared is common type of sensor, and so they can create a bunch of products with that. Here's the infrared band. This vegetation index. I don't know. I don't know if I really have time. Is used in some of this change detection. I had towards the end a little information about change detection tool. I'm not sure how much I'll be able to get into that, but the vegetation index that this is referring to would be it's called the NDVI, which is, I forget what that means. Basically, what it's giving you is a reflectance of a kind of a green value, in that if you take a ratio of the red, near infrared parts of the spectrum, you can get a kind of a measure of the reflectance in the green, and what causes trees to become green. So there's a number of different things. This is that are on there, and you might have to study it a little bit more if you wanted to find out more about it. There's this other one that there is a link to, which I thought was just pretty darn good, because this has a bit more functionality. This top button off to the right, this eye, there is a lot of instructional material on there, but you can plug in and search for a location. and then over here on the left, there's this discover. I guess I'm not going to get too much in the demo of this, but basically I made it. I had it search for images from a certain data range and a certain satellite, and it produced this list here. And so you can see, like, this is a small version of the image. You can see it's kind of cloudy. And I found a few that one I wanted to see, and then queued it up to this visualizer. Also, do I have anything in here? Okay. So I looked at some different images in the visualizer, and there's a way where you can, I guess I'm not going to have time to do a lot more of this, but I put two images in this compare, and I can overlay two images. And so one is from, this is the same area, 625 to 727, June 25th to July 27 of 2021. And if I can use this kind of swipe tool and reveal the earlier image underneath it, so we can visualize the spongy moth damage, and then it greening right back up months later. This tool actually has some GIS functionality. I can use this polygon drawing tool, and I'm just using my left click, and I can draw around that particular damage feature. And I mean, it'll even give me a bunch of information about that polygon that I just drew in there, and I can export it and save it. And this is all just, this is free open access software that's not that hard to really learn, really. Anyways, let me pop back over to the presentation.
I posted those three in the chat as well, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the time, and it looks like, let's see what I have here. So I have some more about that, their screenshot from that site we were just at. Advance. That's weird. Okay, I don't really know if I really have time for this. We might want to move on to just questions, because this website is a lot more. This is a lot more technical part. This website is a change detection website called Forewarn, and it uses that the greenness index, the NDVI that I was speaking of, which is just this little graphic of, it makes a ratio out of red and near infrared parts of the wavelength spectrum. It's really a good index for looking at how green, how much foliage is there. This is just a graphic that's looking at the months of the year on the X and the NDVI. And so as we go into the spring, the NDVI goes up quite a bit with greening up. We have our summer green, and then the fall, it falls back down. And this is just showing how deviations from expected NDVI can show up due to this is a program that's really good for looking at hurricane damage, tornadoes, severe defoliation, things have to be kind of a big cover a rather large area. It's not going to get down to real subtle changes. It uses a satellite that has a pixel size of like 16 acres, so it's not very fine. But um, I might be able to go through a couple more of these slides and not do the demo. These graphics have the whole year in each one of these graphs these are multiple years where the high point is in the summer and the low point is in the winter. And this is to show that there's not a lot of variability because coniferous forests stay green all year. And then here we have deciduous forests where in summer they're much more green than the winter. This pattern you can actually map out forest types into these kind of categories just from this information you're getting from a satellite. Anyways, this tool is pretty handy. Like I say, it can help you detect large scale damage in forests. This is some damage that was detected from using this change detection software, Forewarn, where in the winter months they were able to detect year by year in this graph here, where this arrow is going down, the lowest values per year are not holding steady. They're getting less green every winter, and that those hemlock trees that were in the stand are getting fewer and fewer. And so these areas that are where the change detected at that point of the year, because the change is a kind of a snapshot at one point in time, was quite a bit in these when it was recorded in the winter, that there just weren't as many conifers that had foliage. And so this pretty much was detecting, nicely mapping hemlock mortality from hemlock woolly adelgid. Here's some examples of it. So there's two things going on in here in this shot of Louisiana, where there was a hurricane that came through a few years ago. That was a year where they had like a couple come right through. And this is, and then over here closer to New Orleans is some defoliation that's in that red area, but the red just indicating that there's a large departure from the expected greenness value. And so it doesn't always tell you what caused it, but that departure and greenness can really pick up nicely certain types of damage. There's some other, I don't know if this is the easiest for you, Lori, to get these on the chat or something, but these are just some other tools and interesting sites that I thought you might be interested in. This Forest Faucets is a interactive map that's really gives a lot of information about watersheds and their impact on drinking water and watershed health. What's in here? Oh, and there's a dashboard. If you ever use one of these dashboards for our Eastern region air detection survey data, might be of interest. And I think that was pretty much it. All right.
Yep. And I did just post those final links in the chat as well. And like I said, I'll make sure I put them in the follow-up email to everybody. So that'll be good. So very, very interesting. Lots of great data. It's amazing how much is available to you guys to use and all that stuff. I have a quick question. You mentioned, Chris, southern pine beetle. Is that still a problem in New Jersey? Is that something in the Pine Barrens?
Yeah, it's still there, and it's still an issue. It hasn't been causing really high levels of tree mortality in the last few years, but in general, the Pine Barrens were really the northern end of the distribution of southern pine beetle, and to the point where they were only noted like every 30 years they'd have a little outbreak or something. But then over the last 10 years, we've been noticing southern pine beetle being found farther and farther north. So now Long Island has had a lot in their pine barrens, and even found it up into like Rhode Island or even over like in Massachusetts. But the thing is that yes, there's been fewer cold winter events, cold winter and cold snaps kind of in spring and fall that are kind of timed just right, where insect might not be expecting it as much or prepared to deal with it as much. Can cause a lot of winter mortality. Southern pine beetle is a bark beetle that does very well in the south, very not very well adapted to cold. So that was always a limiting factor. If New Jersey's experiences a lot of cold snaps, it can knock it back, but it should be expected that it'll still stay around going into the future.
Okay. And then you mentioned beech leaf, is it beech leaf disease?
Yeah, beech leaf disease.
As an upcoming emerging thing, right? And I think on that map you showed that there has been detections in New Jersey, right?
Yeah, I didn't show it. It mapped in New Jersey. We've been mapping it on a kind of on a county by county basis from field reports, and it is a disease that's a little bit puzzling in that the main thing that I'm just a pathologist more working with this, but the is a nematode that gets into the leaf, and I think there's a theory that's nematode in conjunction with like a bacteria or something, but it seems to be spreading and being found all over the place, because it was first detected 4 years ago in around Cleveland, and suddenly a couple of years later it spread to 20 counties, and then now it's being all up into New England and New Jersey, and it infects the leaves lower down in the canopy. A lot of understory trees get infected first. Those understory trees can get killed by it because they're smaller. Bigger trees not as easily killed, but it really makes the leaves kind of grow in all funky shapes and not function properly, and is very new. A lot of research still trying to figure out exactly what causes it and exactly why it's suddenly popping up everywhere. But yeah, beech trees have had a lot of things to deal with because there's beech bark disease too. It's a major problem.
Crazy. Andy, do you have any questions? I don't think.
I want to throw in a quick advertisement. I think we forgot to mention Tree Farm Day.
You did.
Because we do have May 7th, we've got the annual meeting of the Forestry Association. June 3rd will be the annual Tree Farm Day, and they are going to be able to have an outdoor event again this year. It will be at the Clover Rod and Gun Club in Stockton or Kingwood Township. So it's Tree Farm Day. It's an all-day event. It doesn't matter whether it's rain or shine, but that's going to be June 3rd for anybody who wants to take that Friday. And it's always the first Friday in June. So that will be Tree Farm Day. And then, of course, a month before that, we've got our annual meeting. So
very good.
Throw that plug in. Sorry, I meant to do that earlier.
Yeah, I actually wrote that down to say at the end too, because I know we talked about saying it and then we forgot to say it. So anyhow, that's okay. Go ahead, Andy. Sorry.
Yeah, Chris. Obviously, you're gathering a whole lot of information, and you're comparing year to year and things like that. How is that information used? How does the Forest Service use that information?
Well, there's mainly two ways that it's used. The national reports where we yard up kind of the bigger, more devastating insect damage and disease damage is typically used for reports for Washington, for up in the to show, even to take the legislature to show, oh, here's what's going on, and we kind of need money for this or that, or for just national reporting, but also within the Forest Service, some districts and forest managers are interested to know if we're finding stuff in their district, and utilizing that in their management to a certain extent. Beyond that, it's more of a trend in a historical documentation. It's not something you can do like a lot of research necessarily. It's more of a monitoring information.
And I guess you coordinate a lot of this with the states. Is that how it works too?
Yeah, because I'm presenting today I was talking a lot about the aerial survey, but our forest health monitoring is kind of in forest health protection. That's really a big part of our charge, is that we want to help the states run forest health programs. We want to suppress insect outbreaks, disease outbreaks, but a big chunk of what we're trying to do is keep track of what's going on and do this monitoring. So with our relationships with the states, there's not only the aerial survey, but there's different ground surveys using pheromone traps to track the spread of new invasives or stuff like this. So there's quite a wide variety of ways that we monitor the damage and spread of a lot of these invasive problems.
And Chris, you mentioned the traps that are, I know we actually put out something to our members about being able to be one of the properties that are monitoring for, I guess, EAB at that point. So does that data, it's collected by the state, right? We worked with the Department of Ag on that. And then does that get to you as well? The U.S. Forest Service?
Yeah, we'll collect that, and I'm not sure we're the best at communicating it back to the general public. I mean, we do have some places where we do that, and like that Forest Health Highlights is a place on a state-by-state basis where we communicate that back. But yeah, we do keep databases. We have our pest event recorder database where like that spread of EAB, that's all, we have a database to keep the track of that, and then we can produce annual maps of the spread. So yeah, we're always looking at ways to do better at keeping our data and then communicating that to the public and stuff. But it is something that, yeah, a lot of times we look for the public. I know that Rosa in the last few years has been wanting to watch for oak wilt issues, since New Jersey doesn't officially have oak wilt, but it's a little bit tough to detect. Oaks will have various issues, or sometimes they'll just like up and die or get some kind of problem, and oftentimes it takes like a sample and doing like genetic analysis or to figure out what the pathogen or what's causing the problem. And so she has kind of mainly depended on folks, woodland owners or what have you, to see something that they think it looks suspicious. What is this? Submitting samples to her, and then we can get that to a lab to look and see what that's causing that. So there are opportunities for landowners to get involved in insect and disease detection work, for sure.
That's neat. So I have a silly question. So we had the cicadas come what was it, last year, right? And a lot of people were concerned because just the ends of their trees were dead, because that's where they, laid their eggs, the tips, and stuff. And it was interesting, Chris, we were talking earlier about going down to Baltimore. I had gone down to Baltimore area during that time period, and they got nailed. And it was interesting because I knew exactly what it was. Is that something that you guys tracked at all? Or I know it doesn't kill the tree necessarily, but I'm just wondering if that showed up on any of those mapping programs.
It turns out that it's a little bit difficult to track as far as from some kind of a remotely as aerial survey or satellite imagery or anything like that to map that damage.
Because it's
Mainly
just the tip.
because it's just scattered within the tree and it's just a little bit of branch tips, and it doesn't. Yeah, it's not easily mapped from our different techniques. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering because it was so monumental, at the time. But yeah, it didn't kill the trees, and it, like you said, it was just the portion of it. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. So
yeah, they're loud too.
yeah. So crazy and big. Oh my gosh. And I don't know, you go online, there were all sorts of recipes on how you could eat them. I'm like, I don't think so. Not happening here. Hi. So I also just wanted to mention before we close, and I also wanted to bring forth some of the chats because people were saying how very interesting this was. So I wanted to share that with you, Chris, and thank yous. There's some thank yous in the chats as well. So our next backyard forestry program is May 19th. And because we mentioned annual meeting is May 7th, right, for Forestry Association, Saturday morning from 9 to 11 virtual. May 19th is our next backyard forestry, and we are talking about white-tailed deer damage. So Andy left, rude. He just left. I think he probably just lost connection. So I just want to mention to our group that May 19th, deer damage, another interesting topic. And then of course, Tree Farm Day. So we're excited to at least have something in person event-wise. So that's cool. So Chris, I think we're good. I really appreciate it. It was, he's back. Really appreciate getting to actually meet you and virtually anyhow. And look forward to continuing to work with you on this and certainly stewardship. Andy, any parting thoughts before we head out?
It's got cut off. I don't know whether it's me or whether it's the whole program, but I lost it.
No, just you. We just thought you were rudely left, so it's okay. We carried on without you.
I've been getting intermittent connection anyway, so but anyway, so yeah, thank you very much, Chris. It was very informative. One question I still have is you've got something like the EAB that has moved from the west and it's moved east and it's making its way across New Jersey, and of course they're going after the ash trees. What happens when all the ash trees are gone? Does the ash borer just disappear?
It doesn't totally disappear. It for most ash species, it is killed where it's had enough time to. It is killed over 95% of all the overstory stems. There are what we call lingering ash. There are ash trees that seem to show some kind of tree defense, some resistance to the insect. And so currently we're working with some trees that are showing some kind of natural resistance, genetically based, for breeding over in Ohio. The research station folks are doing breeding work on that. So long term, the insect doesn't disappear totally because you're like, okay, it doesn't have any trees to live in. But there are ash seedlings still in the landscape. Hopefully, some of those will grow into overstory sized trees still. There's not going to be as many of them, and hopefully in the long term, we can breed a more resistant and plant out those trees, and ash will, very long term planning make a comeback, but it might be more like the chestnut or something.
I was just gonna say, it's gonna be that long haul like the chestnut tree. But hey, they got to it, so they're back in business, if you will. So that's a good thing. So, okay, crazy.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
I
hope
this is great.
People liked it and got something from it.
Yep, the chat comments were saying thank you very much, Chris. This was interesting. In the future, I would like to learn more about the insects that are infesting our woodlands and what we as forestry owners should be doing. So that's good advice. And then Juanita said thank you, very interesting. So yeah, it was really great, very interesting. It's great that we have that kind of data that we can use to help hopefully keep our forests as healthy as possible, right?
Yeah.
So, because there's always something going on. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, right. So hopefully we'll see you again soon. And again, thanks. And hopefully all the people that were on tonight will see you again, annual meeting, and then next month's backyard forestry. So
All right.
I hope everybody has a good evening.
Yeah. Have a good night.
All right.
Everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.